Absolutely. I suppose one thing I wanted to touch, obviously, and there's been plenty of chat over social media and everything else about the fact that I suppose a Leinster final only had 24,000, 25,000 obviously at the game, and obviously you were at the game, so you could probably sample the atmosphere and you were in amongst it. But certainly from watching on the TV, like it did feel quite dead and it did feel quite empty, and especially following on from the Munster final, which was just like there wasn't an empty seat in the house. Like it was fans everywhere. Like nearly looked like there was more people in there than there probably should have been. Whereas in this final, it was very, very empty. It felt very shallow, and I felt like a game like that deserved a better atmosphere. It deserved more supporters to be there. But like that was quite this. But like, why do you think for Galway and Kilkenny fans in particular, like, because Kilkenny, like they obviously don't have a football team at senior level that they need to travel for. Galway, fair enough, like their footballers have come on quite strong, but Galway probably is a predominantly hurling county. Like if you ask most people around Galway, they would tell you they're more of a hurling county than a football county. So like why do you think not many fans sort of made the journey to Croke Park, and why was the attendance so low compared to, because it was actually quite low compared to other finals as well, which is a bit
I don't know, like it genuinely, I think you'd have to take a look into a lot of factors. If I had to take an educated guess, I'd say there's probably a couple of potential factors. Number one, Galway to Dublin is quite a long journey. And the cost of accommodation in Dublin is, as we know, ridiculous. Like you wouldn't be like, if you want to park your car overnight, it probably costs you $5,000. But like in terms of like Dublin is very expensive to get to. Then on top of that, and look, I thought Galway travelled probably. There was more Galway fans. I got the feeling watching from the stadium that there was more Galway fans in the
It did look like that from the TV, in fairness. Yeah.
So that reason probably is debunked. The second reason, last year's Leinster Final wasn't that good. And that's just brutally honest. Like last year's Leinster Final as a game wasn't that good. It was all about Brian Cody, Henry Shefflin. But then again, last year's attendance wasn't great either. And you had a real storyline going into last year's Leinster Hurling Final. Obviously, Brian Cody, Henry Shefflin, would they shake hands, all this stuff. Like that was a real rivalry there going into that game. And yet it still didn't draw it. So I think it is something to look into more of, like, why hasn't it drawn as much attention? Why didn't it draw? And I think the other thing as well, right, was that like the games leading up to it had been in the Munster Championship had been just breathtaking. And here's the other thing, like, you go to a Munster game, like next year, right? I know this in my head. Next year I want to go to a Munster hurling match, and I can guarantee you, I'll pick one, and 9 times out of 10 it's going to be an absolute cracker of a game, like genuinely world class. Yeah. The Leinster Hurling Championship this year had some fantastic games, but then also had some quite, just boring games. Like Galway, Wexford, 2 of the big 4. Galway put them away without a fuss. Like that type of thing. Do you know what I mean? Where like the standard wasn't quite the same. And for the final, I feel like could that have played into it? I don't want to say that any fans don't travel well or anything, but the thing was, I was in the premium section of the Davin, and that was actually quite full. Like there actually was a lot of people around there. But then when I looked down, I could see that the lower Davin below us had basically nobody. And all the shots of Killian Buckley hitting that last minute goal, if you look at them, there's nobody in the stand there below him.
It is disappointing to see. Like, but as you said, there is a lot of factors that come into it. And I think it's €35 for a sitting ticket, which is just absolutely mental money altogether. Like, to be paying, like, and obviously it's not easy with the cost of living and everything else, like you said before. And for Galway fans making the journey, Kilkenny fans making the journey, as well. Like, I did see like a few people tagged me on Twitter and everything else who were saying that maybe the final, these provincial finals should be moved to Tullamore or Portlaoise or Nolan Park, even maybe as well.
I wouldn't be so against it, because like the other thing is, right, is that how many people does the Gaelic Grounds hold exactly? Do you know?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it might be. I'll check that very quickly. I think it might be around 40,000. I think
40,000 mark, and and don't get me wrong,
49,000.
if they had a 60, 70,000 seater stadium, they would have sold that out as well. Like the appetite to get
Yeah.
to go to that game was unbelievable. But yeah, I think it's a number of factors. I think there is just a hurling craze down in Munster as well. Like a pure, like they live and breathe hurling. And look, Kilkenny live and breathe hurling as well. But I don't know. It's a hard one. It's a really
I
hard
feel like
one.
I feel like Kilkenny have always been the county that they turn up for a semi-final and final usually, and whether that's probably got to do with the fact that they were so dominant for so long, and probably even spelled into the same problem that's happening with Dublin actually at the minute in football again, which is where, as you were saying, Kilkenny were so dominant through Leinster. It just wasn't that appetizing for their fans to turn up, and it's probably similar with Dublin right now as well, where in Leinster a lot of Dublin fans probably don't show up till semi-finals and finals as well. Like if we're being perfectly honest, and maybe that, although Leinster is quite different right now, like it's maybe that's something to got to do with it as well. But like I suppose the only issue
with Dublin, it was more like, in my opinion, it was more because of the style that they adopted over the pass, take a shot from a percentage area and just strangle a team. It was just like, it wasn't, game was over but game was over before it even began. And it was like Dublin in the mid 2000s. Was that in anywhere near as good a Dublin team as what we've seen over the last 10 years? No. But they were a hell of a lot more exciting because they would nearly mess it up constantly. Like they would nearly mess it up against any team they played against. And look, 82,000 people came to watch Dublin Laois in 2007 in the Leinster Football Final. Like, that sounds insane when you put that up against today. And look, that was during the Celtic Tiger. That was a completely different time to be in Ireland. There was no cost of living crisis in Ireland back then. People could happily pay away for a ticket to go see a Leinster final. And the other thing was, there was jeopardy. Dublin could lose. Dublin were actually fancied to be beaten in that Leinster final by a lot of people by that Laois side. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't jeopardy for Kilkenny in this game. There obviously was, but I do think it needs looking into, because the Munster Hurling Championship right now is perfect. It's perfect. There's nothing more they can do. It is the perfect product. The only thing I would say is promote it a bit more. Like that's my general GA marketing 101 suggestion, that just market the games a bit better. But in terms of a product, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. The Leinster Championship, it didn't draw the numbers that the Munster did. So why not? And think about this now in the off season. How can they draw more people to the games? Because there definitely is ways that they can do it.
Yeah, and I suppose like there is an argument. Look, if Wexford were in the final, there definitely would have been a lot more. Like Wexford, I remember 2019, and they took over Dublin for a couple of days in that Leinster final. If Offaly were to get there, they would certainly bring a lot of numbers. Dublin, I think, would probably be similar, to be honest with you, with what we probably seen. Maybe the hill might have been open then, or something like that. But again, Dublin are a predominant football county. But I suppose like the flip side of that, and I think the problem is like, and I think it kind of goes back to Leinster GA in some ways, and probably even the GA themselves. Like there isn't really another, because you think of like the attendance yesterday was 24,000, and you think about it, like Nolan Park, the attendance there is I think 27,000. I think Portlaoise might be 18,000. I think Tullamore is something similar. So there really isn't another stadium in Leinster that could even nearly facilitate yesterday's attendance, and yesterday's attendance was quite poor. So like, if you did then have a Leinster final that had like a Wexford against the Kilkenny, let's say, for example, the attendance maybe would be around 45,000, but you can't have, there's no what do you do, like, because it's, and I think this is the same conversation we had with the Leinster Football Championship as well, where there really isn't, like, it's hard to find a solution unless they like upgrade Portlaoise, upgrade Tullamore. Obviously, Newbridge is being done at the moment. Upgrade Nolan Park, because it's just it's a difficult one.
It is. It's really difficult because like it just comes back to, in general, like, okay, let's say that you put in the effort to build up these stadiums and make them more suitable to hosting the provincial finals. And then what if all of a sudden the Leinster Hurling Championship explodes into life? What if Wexford now hire somebody who gets the best out of them? And they just, what if they hire like a legend, like a Martin Storey or Larry O'Gorman or someone like that can absolutely galvanise them? And then or Damien Fitzhenry, he deserves a shout as well, but someone who can just galvanise them, and then Wexford are back. And then all of a sudden, it's a real and then Dublin's level continues to rise, and then all of a sudden you have 4 top teams in Leinster, and then all of a sudden they need somewhere to go to host the Leinster final, and you go back to Croke Park, and all that money that they put into the other stadium is just a waste. So it is hard to know what you do from here.
Yeah, and it is maybe the last point to finish up on this.
I'd go the route of let's make what we have better so that we can fill Croke Park. That's what I would do.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. And maybe the last point to finish up on, you had one provincial final that could have sold more seats, more tickets. You feel like if that game, I know you can't have a Munster final in Croke Park, but if that game was in Croke Park, I'm not saying it might have been packed. It might have had the 80,000 there.
I think it would.
It's not impossible, especially when you look at the Ticketmaster issues. And then you've got Galway Kilkenny that's 24,000. You just feel like there's something amiss here, which is mad. Because look, I'm sure the GA want to make more money, but there's just something not quite clicking here. And as you said,
the reality is that it would kill 2 birds at one stone if the GA put another stadium in Dublin. If they put another 45,000 seater stadium in Dublin, well then Dublin would play their home games away from Croke Park. That would kill that argument, and then they would have a better stadium to host the Leinster hurling final potentially, and then that would give Croke Park back its aura of making it to Croke Park. So I actually think, look, if they have the money for it, honestly, pick somewhere in Dublin that you can put a stadium in. I know that's really ridiculous to say, but look at it and think, okay, well, can you make Parnell Park bigger? No. So you do need to kind of pick somewhere and go from there. You'd be looking maybe kind of Abbottstown, not Abbottstown area where they train. Could you put it out there? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a conversation. Most definitely that needs to be had at some point. Kenneth says here, €25 for a ticket for Carlow and Dublin, effing